I've got a submission here from Porco777 who asks why you got to have your D terms so high in order to get good response, sharp response on flips and rolls and get rid of prop wash. And before we look at your logs, let me speak in general about that a little bit. If somebody tells me that they have to turn their D term way up in order to get good response, get rid of overshoot or bounce on flips and rolls, my first thought is that the P term isn't quite right. You can cover up a problem with your P term by raising the D term. The D term is commonly thought of as a dampening factor on the P term, but that's actually only half the story. It is both a dampening and an accelerating factor. I have a video on my channel about D term that kind of explains it a little bit. If you search my channel for D term, I think you should find it. But basically, whatever the P term is doing, the D term makes it do it more. So if the P term is climbing rapidly, the D term will accelerate it to make it climb more rapidly. And if the P term is slowing down, that's the one we think of as the dampening force, the D term will make it slow down more abruptly and not overshoot, okay? So when you raise the D term, you can sharpen up the response of the copter in a way that is not unlike raising the P term. But the difference is that raising the D term is this exponential effect that amplifies noise in the system, and it just gets, it's like you have a cup of coffee and you get a little sharp and you get a little motivated and you take a shot of meth and now you're all twitchy all day long, right? Okay, I don't know. I mean, so I hear. Okay, so the D term is like the meth, and the P term is like the caffeine, right? Okay, you want a little bit, but you don't want to go overboard. I guess I'm not sure where this analogy has gone. Let's move on. Now, if we go back far enough in time to like CleanFlight 1.9, before Betaflight was a thing, the D term was so noisy and ineffective. The gyro filtering was so bad. Everything was such a mess that you had to work super hard to get a good tune. And this was also back in the days before we had ESCs with strong braking. We were trying to just wring the most performance we could from the setup. And so you had to really fine tune the balance between the P term and the D term. The P term could not do the job by itself. The D term was terrible at its job. And you had to find this careful balance where you had sort of the least bad of anything. And people still got these great flight videos. But if you were to go back to CleanFlight 1.9 and tune it the best you could, you would be amazed at how bad it feels to fly it. And you go put it on some F12 ESCs, instead of a modern ESC, you're going to be astounded at how much better. It's sort of incremental, right? Copters have gotten slowly better and better and better and better and better, and it's almost easy to forget just how much better they fly now than they used to, and how much easier they are to tune than they used to be. So if it were a different time and place, I would say, well, you're doing the best you can, and maybe you got to raise that D term up, and there's nothing you can do about it. But in this day and age, with Betaflight, you're flying Betaflight 251, with the modern equipment that we have, and you're flying top-notch equipment, KISS ESCs, nobody can complain about the braking on those, right? Nothing in here says that you should have a problem getting your copter to fly fantastic with just P term, 520 grams all up weight. There's nothing in here that says that you should have a problem getting your copter to fly great with just P. And the thing is, I don't know your setup and I don't know exactly what's going on with you, but there's like a jillion other people out there flying equipment very, very similar to this, and nobody else is having to raise their D term like crazy. So I think my prescription, and I haven't even looked at your logs yet, but I think my prescription is going to be that you need to really commit to going back and getting your P terms dialed in. And I think if you reduce your D terms to like 5, like you've heard me say before, take your D terms down to 5 on all 3 axes, and then really commit to getting your P terms as sharp as you can, and then raise your D terms just enough to get rid of any bounce. I don't see why you couldn't do it. I mean, just because, like I said, your equipment is up to spec. There's nothing deficient about it that would mean that you would need to take extraordinary steps in order to get rid of that bounce with just sort of the mostly P and just a little bit of D. So that's what I have to say about that, but let's take a look at your logs and let's see what we got. Actually, before we take a look at your logs, let's watch this video with me with the high D term, and I want you to listen to your motors when you raise the throttle. Listen to how rough and noisy, and there is a high frequency overtone, and that is noise from the D term. And if you ever hear this when you guys are out there tuning line of sight, with if you're in the field and you hear this, you know for sure that it's a sign of way too high a D term. Okay, let's listen. Now, there is if you don't know what it sounds like, maybe it's not obvious. There's a high frequency overtone, a roughness to the motors. It's almost a screaming sound, but not like the normal smooth screaming that comes from, if you've got everything just right. I feel like we're going to look at this and we're going to see the D term going nuts. I could be wrong. Whereas if we listen to this one, listen. I don't know if you're going to pick it up from just, my recording. Go back, watch the original videos. Those motors sound smoother, don't they? They do to me. Let's look at the black box logs. And let's look at the 009, which is the high D term one. Actually, let's load that one up. All right. Here we go. So let's look at the PID. Let's look at the roll D term. Oh, let's look at the gyros first. I can never not look at the gyros first. All right. Let's see. Are we flying here? Yeah, look what happens here. The roll is crazy bad. This isn't good. It's not good. I mean, I always say, hey, if it's flying good, just stick with it. But this is just so clearly a sign of something that this is not right. You shouldn't have to settle for this in order to get good flight characteristics. So it's flying good, yes, but this is wasting energy. It's heating up your motors. It's stressing your ESCs. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you don't care and you just want to go fly, in which case more power to you. But you shouldn't have to settle for this, and you don't have to settle for this. You definitely should be able to tune this out. And what we see here, this crazy, crazy noise in the gyro at high throttle, that's probably your D term doing that. Thankfully, it's only at high throttle when it gets really bad. Well, no, I see it. Even at mid throttle, you still got a really noisy roll. So let's take a look at your roll. All right, there we go. So it's picture. Yeah, you knew I was going to say it, and I'm going to say it. D term is crazy, crazy noisy. So I cannot judge your P term because the P term is getting yanked around by the D term. The D term you can see is at 2 times in magnitude the P term, and it is just constant high frequency noise all over the place. You don't. I mean, you don't have to settle for this. So this, I would want to take this down and just take it down to a minimal level, like 5, and then check your P term and go from there. Let's take a look at your other, oops, wrong one. Let's take a look at your other file, 003, and let's see what I want to see is when you bring your D term down to, now this is more reasonable level for your D term. Notice the interaction here. The D term is about half the magnitude of the P term. It's not larger than the P term. This is probably where you're doing those turns and you're a little bit in prop wash here. P term is working. There's again the prop wash turn. So this feels like a tune that I would like personally. I can see that the P term is active and working here, right? These kind of humps and surges, right? It is generally active. It is seldom just coasting along down near the axis. We see some signs of oscillation here, but not all the time. And in prop wash, we get some oscillation. The D term could come up a little, I think, without making those crazy oscillations. But in general, I feel like this is a tune I'd be happy with. Now, you want to get rid of that prop wash oscillation. So I tend to do that by bringing P down. And I feel like I get a tune where I don't get any overshoot or bounce back on flips and rolls with uh, very little prop wash oscillation. On my King Kong 5040 props, I get no prop wash oscillation. If I go to the Dow TJ 5045 tri-blades, I get a little bit of oscillation on sharp turns if I don't retune, which I don't bother. But I'm happy with it, and I feel like that's a fine place to be. I would say that I would take your D term down, get your P term, lower your P term to the point where it just barely gets rid of the prop wash oscillation on whichever axis is experiencing it, and then do flips and rolls like that and see if you get, I don't see why you would get overshoot or bounce back on at that point. So, but that's what I would want to see. What I would want to see is a tune where your D term is minimal. It's sort of out of the picture. Your P term is just barely low enough that all of the prop wash oscillation goes away. And then do some flips and rolls and dig into your tune then and figure out what's happening that's causing you to get overshoot and bounce back. Because, like I say, your all-up weight is low. Your ESCs have great braking and great response. There's nothing about your setup that should cause you to not be able to have really clean flips and rolls under those conditions. Okay, well, I hope that's helpful. Let's just before I go, let's just take a quick look at your yaw axis, because you never know, your yaw axis can cause problems, and no, it's not. Sometimes the yaw axis makes really crazy problems if it's not tuned right, but yours looks fine. All right, well, I hope that's helpful, and happy flying.